2017. Just a couple housekeeping things before we start. If you have cell phones, please put them on silent so they don't go off during the meeting. If you've not had the pleasure of attending one of our meetings before, a couple things to keep in mind. Once we do the roll call and approve the minutes, city staff will present on an item, and then right after they present, it'll be open, the floor will be open just to commission members for technical questions. Once we close the floor for technical questions, we invite public comment and questions. If you do have something to say, please step up to the microphone over there, state your name and address so we have it for the minutes, and be prepared to answer any questions we might have as well. I ask that you keep your comments as close to the topic as possible and not to wander off aimlessly. And then once we're done with public commentary, we bring it back to the commission for discussion and usually a vote. With that, let's call the roll.
David Gorsuch,
Present.
Ed Bowen, Jeffrey Tomes.
Here.
Thomas Wojtek.
Here.
John Hintz.
Here.
Steve Cummings.
Here.
Kathleen Propp.
Here.
John Kiefer.
Here.
Robert Weigert.
Here.
Michael Ford.
All right, thank you. Approval of the minutes from August 1st, a rather lengthy meeting. Are there any changes, additions, deletions?
Move to approve. Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion clearly passes. Let's move on to item number 1, extraterritorial two-lot land division and certified survey map at 2960 County Highway Z in the town of Nakai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The petitioner is requesting a two-lot land division from one existing 37.35 acre parcel. Lot 1 will be 34.84 acres in size, and Lot 2 will be about 2.5 acres. The subject site is located on the northwest corner of County Highway Z and County Highway I in the town of Nakai, about 3 miles south of Oshkosh city limits. The site is mostly vacant and agricultural, and also includes a single-family residence and associated outbuilding. The surrounding area consists of mostly agricultural uses along with sporadic single-family uses. The purpose of this land division is to separate the existing residence and outbuilding from the surrounding agricultural land. The new residential lot will be about 2.5 acres in size and appropriate area for the single-family residential use, and Lot 1 will remain vacant and agricultural. The proposed land division will not alter the existing land use patterns in the area and is consistent with the city's 10 and 20-year comprehensive plan land use recommendations. The Department of Public Works recommended increasing the right-of-way width of County Road Z to 80 feet, which is typically required for minor arterials per the comprehensive plan. However, the plan does not specifically identify County Highway Z as a minor arterial. And the Department of Public Works also requests that any required drainage easements be shown on the final CSM per Winnebago County code requirements. And here's the proposed CSM. And staff recommends approval of the two-lot extraterritorial land division as proposed with the following condition, that any necessary drainage easements shall be placed on the final CSM per Winnebago County requirements.
Thank you. Any technical questions? Stuff. All right, anybody here from the public to speak to this item today? Once? Twice? Okay, back to the commission.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let's call the roll.
Weigert.
Aye.
Gorsuch.
Aye.
Tomes.
Aye.
Hintz.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Propp.
Aye.
Kiefer.
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
All right, moving on to item number 2, extraterritorial preliminary plat for Sand Hill Farms located in the town of Amro.
Thank you. The petitioner is requesting approval of an 85-lot extraterritorial plat in the town of Amro. The property is located in a developing residential area in the town of Amro, approximately 3 miles west of Oshkosh city limits. The residential lots in this area are served by the Algoma Sanitary District number 1, as well as private wells. The plat shown here includes 82 lots and 3 outlots. Because the plat is extraterritorial, the city's subdivision regulations pertaining to physical design requirements do not apply, and the plat needs to be reviewed on the basis of being consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. And here's the 10 and 20-year comprehensive land use plan map. The plat is located in an area that the city's land use plan identifies as appropriate for residential use. The plat is located in a developing residential area in the town of Amro that, based on existing development patterns and boundary agreements, the city will likely not expand into this area. The Department of Public Works reviewed the proposal and did not have any concerns other than Outlot 3 appears to be within the proposed road right-of-way. And staff recommends a finding that the proposed extraterritorial plat is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and be approved.
Okay, technical questions from the commission. Jeffrey?
Couple quick ones. Do we anticipate that this particular development will have any impact on water runoff toward the lake going through Oshkosh at all?
I mean, other than it has to meet it'll have to meet the stormwater requirements for either the town of Onro or Winnebago County. It'll have to comply with those requirements.
We didn't evaluate to see if it's gonna have any issues.
Nope.
And then two, we currently provide ambulance service, is that correct, to Amro? Do we know if there's gonna be any impact, any additional requirements burden on us to apply that because of this increase?
As part of our review process, we don't generally. Steve's coming up to talk about something.
Oh, you don't,
Stormwater.
okay, never
Oh,
mind.
stormwater, not sanitary sewer, because all right, sorry.
No,
The
I got
ambul-
confused, it's Algoma, not Amro.
Okay. Other,
Regardless of when we answer that question, it's, all these processes all of our items are reviewed as a multidisciplinary internal review team. If there was something noted from fire, police, anybody, they note it during those reviews.
other technical questions? Seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? If so, step up to the mic and tell us what you. Okay, Steve?
Question based on what was read off there. This is in the town of Amro area. Town of Amro shouldn't be fed by the Algoma Sanitary Sewer District. Our,
Town of Amro.
Amro.
Algoma's created Algoma #1 a couple years ago.
not with permission from the city, I don't believe. Tried to do that and we stopped. We didn't want the additional flow.
They talked to Ben Criminor on
Maybe not here.
Interesting
All right.
topic then.
Yep.
Sorry for the interruption.
Anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Okay, seeing none, back to the commission. David?
Does the question that Steve raised have any material effect on our actions?
Actually, don't have an answer to that. I don't have an answer to that question. I mean, we'd have to look at the terms of our, any of those operating agreements that we have with the town of Algoma Sanitary District and relate to that, I guess. That's the best I got for you, David. I mean, if there's an applicant here, we could talk to the applicant, or we could potentially lay this over for a couple weeks and answer that question. I don't have
Yeah,
an answer.
and I don't know if it's material what our action is, but if it is material, then
Need to know. Jeff?
Possible to do then a conditional approval pending that answer, because I'd assume this has to go before city council to get that answer in between, so we're not delaying this whole process.
That'll be an answer by tomorrow, but, yeah, we could do it that way.
It seems simpler than waiting 2 more weeks.
Yeah,
we don't
yeah.
Yeah, there's no reason to delay.
I would rather just go ahead and approve it, have you have the answer to give to the common council for them to do the final action on.
Subject to approval of sanitary sewer? Yeah. Subject to approval of, yeah, sewer?
And yeah, the impact on,
Do you want to add a condition, a formal condition to our motion, or are you just formally
well, I
suggesting?
think you add that,
I was just suggesting that.
Okay, as in,
I would think you would add that as a
agree.
condition.
Okay.
With whoever approved it.
is there a motion on the floor yet? I don't believe I heard.
He
it.
made the motion.
He made the motion, but he
Got it.
wants to include with the,
Got it. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded, and then the condition's been added per the permission of the person who made the motion. Any further discussion? All right, let's call roll.
Weigert. Borsek.
Aye.
Holmes.
Aye.
Hintz.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Crop.
Aye.
Kiefer. Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
All right, now how do you want to do item 3 here? We got 3 different,
There are 3 different sections of
want to
this.
do it one at a time
Um,
for voting?
whatever your pleasure is. Do it one at a time. I'm going to go relatively briefly. It is a relatively simple application, just have several steps. If you'd like, we could explain the whole thing at one time.
I'd recommend you explain all the actions at once and then come back and.
Okay.
Vote on each item.
So items 3A, B, and C, 2-lot land division and certified survey map on the east side of South Keller Street and south of West 9th Avenue. A zone change from SMU Suburban Mixed Use District to SMU PD Suburban Mixed Use District with planned development overlay for property located at 1126 South Keller. And finally, general development plan and specific implementation plan at 1126 South Keller Street for Potbelly. It's all yours.
Okay, we have a 2-lot subdivision here. It's the existing site where we have Staples, Hobby Lobby, and Duluth Trading Co. On the east side, it's the large multi-tenant center. Kind of on the west portion of the site was a previous easy payday loan business. That building has since been removed. Petitioner's in the process of doing a new Potbelly's restaurant. Really, the focus of these 3 items is the off-premise sign that we'll just jump right to where I have a picture of it here, is the off-premise sign that exists on the site, and you can kind of see it here. On the eastern portion of what is Lot 2 is the existing sign for Staples and some of the other tenants. During this subdivision process, that sign is going to be located now off-premise on the Potbelly's property. So in doing this split, we're kind of creating a legal situation. To remedy that, we're proposing to, or the applicant is proposing to rezone the property to SMU with a plan unit development. Plan unit development, then permitting that off-premise sign to remain on site. A couple of conditions specific to the land division. Through our code, they do need to provide updated cross-access easements and parking agreements for Lot 1 and 2, because there is just kind of a blending of the 2 lots with parking and access. They do need to show those easements and improvements all on their CSM, and then we would want to do it subject to the zone change and the improvement then of the GDP and SIP. Talking a little kind of specifically about the zone change, the immediate area we have pretty much all SMU zoning district. The parcels to the north and south are already planned developments. This parcel presently does not have that planned development, but the specific piece that they're cutting out here for the Potbelly's restaurant will be the SMU with the planned development for that off-premise sign. One back. One of the conditions we're recommending on that site is that should that off-premise sign ever be destroyed, damaged, need to be replaced, we would like to see it then relocated onto the appropriate lot where it becomes on-premise signage and meet all code requirements that would go with that. And kind of looking specifically at the planned development. So this site was previously, came in for permitting and review of the site plan specific to Potbelly's before they decided to do the land division. At that time, the site was reviewed for its compliance with landscaping, lighting, signage. So all of those things have been previously checked and verified. This is the proposed new plan for Potbelly's, which is already under construction, maintaining the same access points that they have today. Building is about a 2,200 square foot facility. And you can kind of see here on the plan, this is actually the off-premise sign that they intend to have remaining, which is right adjacent to the building. Here's just some pictures of what the Potbelly facility would look like. Their signage plan was already sent in and approved, meets the base SMU zoning district. And then the picture on the top right, you can kind of see that existing Staples Cellcom multi-tenant sign that they're proposing to leave on the new Lot 1. A couple of conditions proposed with this development. Again, providing the cross-access and parking agreements per the code. Base standard modification to allow that off-premise sign. And then again, should that off-premise advertising need to be replaced for any reason, that it be relocated on the appropriate lot. We are recommending approval of all three items.
All right, thank you. Technical questions for any of the three? Start with David and then on to Joe.
One, I assume that, number 3, does that allow for any modifications of the sign as is?
No, we
Or
will
it's
just, it would be the sign as is today. They could do any, tenant changes should they have a new tenant go in under the standard code requirements of, putting a new panel into that existing sign. This would only kick in if they want to do, whole scale changes to that sign.
Secondly, stormwater question. Do we look at the aggregate change or the aggregate construction of, does this revert back to new stormwater requirements?
So the Department of Public Works did review the pop alleys when it came in for their original site plan for stormwater management. I did note in the plan a little bit of what their comments were. I think that's on item 3C. So in March 2017, there was a submittal. They did review it and just required that, as-built drawings and everything be provided per their normal code requirements.
It's a little different than that, and that is that I believe that we have a policy that we look at any land use changes within a larger development, that you start aggregating those changes to add them together if we get to the, whatever it was, 24,000 square feet or 40,000 square feet, and then that triggers that whole site has to go back to the city stormwater management program.
I defer to Steve.
Yeah,
Steve's here. We
they,
can-
they commented on the plan when it came through. That's all I could say.
I mean, I just want to know if we're keeping track of all that and adding it up.
Public Works does keep track of that. I know they do. Keep track of changes. Necessitate or trigger the requirement.
Jeff? Jeff, you're next. Oh. You're next, I believe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so for clarification, they couldn't add another panel to the sign.
No, they could not.
Under what circumstances would Staples and them be forced to move that sign? If a new tenant came in, if Pot Pelly's left and a new tenant came in, is this PD still gonna be enforced so that it doesn't burden Staples and Cellcom to move that sign?
So the PD would allow that off-premise sign to remain as is. It wouldn't necessarily, the PD doesn't specify only if Potbelly's is in there. Once the plan development is in there, it permits that sign. If they want to make changes to that sign, they could always try to amend the plan development.
So in the case if it got destroyed by wind or whatever, they would have to move it
Correct.
on their premise?
That's what we're saying, is if this sign is destroyed by fire, wind, something, or they want to make whole-scale changes to it, at that time, it would be appropriate to relocate it to the on-premise lot.
And then they would have to follow our ordinances with regards to sign.
Correct, the on-premise sign regulations.
Right.
Other technical questions, folks? Okay, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Okay, back to the commission.
Are we voting on
I
one
was
at a
good-
time,
yeah,
or are we?
I was just gonna say, if anybody objects, I would make a motion to approve all three of them at once, unless somebody
second that.
objects.
All right, any discussion on that motion? David?
Yeah, and I have no problem with it. I would just like the minutes to reflect that, just that Public Works looks at continually looks at the amount of land changes and where the trigger is for stormwater.
All right,
Didn't mean to step on you, sorry.
I seconded
okay. So I think we can do a yay, nay on that. All those in favor of doing them all together, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, I'll call the roll for all three together.
And John, you made the motion?
Yes.
And who made the second?
Robert.
All right. Weigert,
Aye.
Boyce,
Aye.
Holmes,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Kiefer. Aye. Foytek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
All right, moving on to item number 4, amendment to the specific implementation plan approval for a mixed-use arena event complex located at 1212 South Main.
Okay, so the applicant has come forward with several proposed changes to the arena project. We're gonna go through them kind of one at a time here, to kind of highlight the changes that they're proposing. Just as a real quick overview, we have the original approved site plan up there. We're gonna break it down a little bit as we go in each of these changes. And then just to kind of give you a high overview, this is the amended site plan. As you can see, not a whole lot of different, but there are some subtle nuances that have changed. So the first is the northwest corner of the building area was originally proposed as a parking lot. You can see kind of the 5 spaces on the left-hand side of the building and 5 on the north side of the building there. The applicant has now proposing to turn that area into a public plaza. So a gathering space for fans and people attending events there prior to the game. So we are looking at a net loss of a couple of parking spaces there, but going to a more pedestrian-oriented site. A second area that's changing is kind of the southwest corner of the building. They had originally shown a mechanical area that they included with the dumpsters. As the actual building drawings and scoping of this project changed, it was determined that that mechanical area needed to be enlarged a little bit. So we now have a little bit larger of a mechanical equipment area. And then off to the right side, you see they have relocated the dumpster area within its own enclosure. So that area expanded a little bit. Again, the net result is a loss of a couple of parking spaces. And the third area that underwent changes is their receiving area. This is the original plan, which kind of had 3 receiving parking stalls for semis. And then the entrance to kind of the home team, visitor team parking area along the far eastern portion of the building. During kind of the changes that this plan has undergone, it was determined that they needed 4 spaces for semi-trailer parking, and 1 kind of is a storage parking spot that, as the venue and the things that are maybe taking place in this building have grown, there was limited storage, and they needed to add kind of a flexible spot for temporary storage. In conjunction with that, with the way the railroad right-of-way worked out, we had to shift that entrance over a little bit. So you still have the entrance into the team and away team kind of proposed parking area. It just kind of angled a little bit. Kind of the big change there with it, we had 2 specific curb cuts for those. Now it's 1 large curb cut that will require a base standard modification to have that large of a single curb cut. It's approximately 105 feet of total curb cut now. We did kind of review this against the original parking proposal. It's a net loss of approximately 35 spaces. But staff, and with reviewing what's there, plus the original kind of on-street parking study that was done, is confident that it will still, sufficient parking will still be provided as part of this plan. The changes really we view as a benefit in the whole. Kind of that enhanced pedestrian element will be a definite benefit for the facility. The mechanical, the actual dumpster enclosure will be a little easier to access and isn't kind of facing straight out into the parking now. So that's a bit of a benefit to the plan as well. One of the other changes that was made was actually requested kind of on the city's behalf is to increase the lighting standards along 11th Street. The city's code doesn't allow anything over 0.5 candles per foot for a lighting spill over the property line. Kind of the way this facility is intended to be using, the city does not have a lot of street lighting in that small section of 11th. And actually requested the petitioner to increase their lighting levels to help illuminate kind of those access points in the parking lot as well as the street. So the petitioner has done that, has increased that lighting level enough to kind of help with the street lighting a little bit there. Again, that will require a base standard modification because the present code requirements do not allow that. And then we have some of the signage in. You'll see kind of a lengthy sign package provided. A lot of the signs within that package still say verify, and specifics have not been given to the city at this time. So because of that, we're only going to be looking at a few of the signs on that list. It'll be signs number 2, 3, 4, and 6. So 2, 3, and 4 are kind of the parking and gate signage. So this is kind of a general map showing you where those are. There's number 3, there's 3 of them at the top and 1 at the bottom here. Those are some of the entrance gate signage that we'll be looking at. Excuse me, there's actually 2 at the bottom. Number 2 is kind of the main parking gate, which is on the west side of the property. And then number 4 is kind of the light pole signage that's going to tell you, okay, I'm in section B3 or whatever it may be. So those are the signs we're going to be talking about for one portion of it. The other main sign we're going to be talking about today is the video message board that is proposed to be on the west side of the building. These are some of the renderings of the proposed gate and parking area signage. You can see, the parking signage will have a small sign on it, kind of helping tell you where you're parked. The top one on the right is the gate, the main gate ID. And then the one below it is kind of those ancillary parking gates. So that total square footage of signage is about 128 square feet presently proposed. Code for this district would only be 100 square feet. So a base standard modification is going to be required to permit just this portion of the signage. As the applicant finalizes kind of some of their other plans for freestanding signage, that base standard modification will have to be changed again into increased to accommodate the monument sign and some other things that they're planning. And then they are proposing a roughly 700 square foot video message board. So the video message board is actually this portion of the sign. This is separate and will be handled at a later date, but this is about the 700 square foot video message center. That facade sign alone is over the allotment for what is allowed in the base zoning. So a base standard modification, again, will have to be approved to allow that sign. And then as additional facade signage come in on the building, will likely have to be amended in the future. So here's kind of some general renderings of the facade of the building showing some of these other signs shown in here have not yet been finalized. They're kind of placeholders that the applicant has done showing what could go there. The last kind of aspect they're changing is the actual facade and elevations of the building. These are some of the original drawings that were provided during the plan. And here's today's renderings of the plan. So they've added a fair amount of architectural elements, some spandrel glass, kind of broken up the facade, varied the colors a little bit from the original proposal is. Kind of here you can actually see that plaza area we discussed a little earlier. So it's a little more open space, pedestrian oriented. So here are the rest of the renderings from the facade. So like I said, the colors have changed a little bit, a little more brick, a little more varied color, a fair amount more glass and architectural features on the building than the original proposal. And then, so staff is recommending approval of this with a number of conditions. So the first would be a base standard modification to permit a 105-foot access drive. That's for that combined access drive between the southeast parking and kind of that semi area. Second would be a base standard modification to allow the lighting along 11th Street to be increased over the property line. Then we have a number of specific standards to the video message center. So staff doing some research through what other communities have done and kind of industry standards are recommending a number of these things be done to kind of help with a board that's capable of playing full video style TV. So the first would be that sign not exceed 5,000 nits during daylight hours and a maximum of 500 nits during the evening hours. That's kind of a standard that we found through a lot of places that have EMCs, video message boards. Next, kind of any portion of the any video display portion of the sign have a maximum of 30 seconds. So if they want to play a video clip, only a 30-second video clip. Nothing longer than that. Hopefully to help mitigate, with there is traffic along that street, that somebody's not, maybe watching it too long. To go along with that, we're recommending that instead of it being video right after video, that we have a minimum of a 10-second pause between videos. So a video could play, then they would have to go to a static message for at least 10 seconds before they could play another video element. That was something else we had found other places had done when regulating these type of signage. Next, we're recommending that there be no video displayed on the sign during kind of the evening hours. That between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. on weekdays, they could use the video message components. 11 p.m. on weekends, give them a little extra time for weekend events. But then outside of those hours, so from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., it could only reflect static messages, no actual video displays. That being said, if there is an event on site, we would recommend that that time be extended till the event is done and up to 1 hour after the event before the video capability of the board would have to be turned off. Requesting that the owner of the sign, these things can be used for the amber alerts, the silver alerts, weather statements, that if there is an emergency, that they would coordinate with the city or local officials to get that information out to the public. That's kind of a standard that's been set for these video message boards that have that capability. Any sound associated with that video display would conform to the standard noise ordinance for the city of Oshkosh. Next, we're recommending that this sign, the video display sign specifically, we take a look at it again in 12 months to see what kind of impact it has. Have the standards we're proposing worked? Is there any modifications that need to be made? We do want to make sure that the safety of people in that area is addressed. We feel kind of a 12-month review would give us that ability to do so. We're recommending only signs 2 through 4 and number 6, as described on the sign plan, are under consideration tonight. Again, that's because all the other signs say verify and the specific sizes have not yet been determined. We're recommending a base standard modification from 100 square feet of maximum freestanding signage to 128. That would cover all the signs that are finalized as of this point. Same thing for the wall signage. The 700 square feet would permit the video display board as presently presented. And then a base standard modification to allow gate and parking lot sponsored signage. These signs include like Verve and some of those other names. Traditionally, that would be considered off-premise signage. But in this situation, we feel, it is appropriate that they can use that sponsorship on the gates and the light poles. So they would need a base standard modification to allow that.
All right, quite a mouthful there. Technical question from the commission. Gavin?
This 12-month study of the video display sign, let's say we come in at the end of 12 months and we need significant modifications. We think we need significant modifications. Is that possible? Is everything on, as long as they are allowed a video display sign, is pretty much everything on the table?
Well, I think it is in the plan development. That is a condition that we're putting on. So if there's a brightness issue, if there's a sound issue, I think, I would view everything as being on the table with respect to that sign.
David?
Jeff raised the point at the workshop, something to the effect is, how does this affect other proposed similar signage? There was something tossed about that you may have something separate for a arena district, that perhaps the city take this time to develop a comprehensive ordinance and study and develop an ordinance to address these specific signs and where they may be allowed and under what conditions. And I'm curious where we're at, where we are with that.
We are, just because we've just started talking about it, so we're really nowhere at this point, other than we've done some research on these signs. We've done a lot of research. Mark's called up the other communities like Milwaukee. They don't really have a regulating standard on it. So we've looked long and hard to try and figure out some of these standards. So I think it's something that we're gonna end up creating, because these are relatively new. For this particular sign in this particular area, this is a planned unit development. We're looking at this as a planned unit development. So we can apply any, right now, we can apply any standards that we deem fit on it, because we don't really have a regulating standard for it. So, I think we do have to, as we move forward, we do, and these signs are becoming more popular, I think we do have to come up with a standard. We're just nowhere at this point.
But just, and maybe is so that we don't get trapped in other places in the community, so that, we perhaps amongst us think that this is a one-off, but how this remains as a one-off and not allowable in other circumstances, or how do we address that?
I think from our standpoint, we're viewing it as a planned development for an arena, for a public purpose arena. So I think that in itself lends itself to a different type of standard, and it's in a planned development. So I think you have all those things going to it. It's not like a big box coming in here wanting to put a video display on it. So I don't think it opens the door for everybody getting a video display of this size. I think this is a special circumstance.
And I will add, researching how a lot of other communities have handled this, it's been exactly that way. They've done specific approvals for these at an arena type setting. And our general code would not permit them other places in the city.
Jeffrey?
I think the modifications here address 90% of my concerns. The only other one that I would suggest that we add is that there cannot be any off-site advertising on that video screen. We talked about that we wouldn't allow any other kind of advertising that isn't for a specific event, that we actually put that on there to make sure, because again, we really don't have an ordinance governing this, and that would be a key portion of the ordinance. So I would put that in there to help us, guide us in creating an ordinance with this.
Yep. Other technical questions? Kathy?
I will just later be asking, so in case the petitioner is here and they want to address it, how bright is 5,000 candles per square meter? And how dim is 500? And I hadn't thought about sound. I thought about video, but not sound. That could become more than annoying. So I don't know how loud something would be from the video that would still conform with the noise ordinance. So we don't have to address that right now, but I'm going to be asking.
I can address a little bit of it for you, the lighting elements. Doing the code research, 500 nits is considered the equivalent of what a static sign is in daylight. And
Static, lit
a
sign.
regular sign during the day is about 500 nits is what the industry standard has found. So the daytime illumination of this sign at 500 nits would be the same as another sign. It would be no brighter than.
Well, this would be the nighttime illumination.
Then 500 nits at night is again the approximate equivalent of what a standard sign would be at night. That's backlit or underlit.
Okay. So signs do change brightness. If I were to go down the street and find another sign, it would change brightness between day
Not even
and.
actually, even just standard, like painted or poster signs. The illumination of those, if you measured it with a light meter during the day, would be about 5,000 and 500 at night if it was backlit.
Oh, okay.
If that makes sense.
Other technical questions? Okay, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Going once? Twice? Okay, back to the commission.
Second.
Kathy
I'm
and
asking
Steve.
my question about sound. That other people's sound really
Well, the sound's gonna have to have to meet the limits of our noise ordinance. So what we're stating is it can't be too loud as it would exceed a certain decibel level at the property line. Whatever our ordinance is. It's the same way we handle things at the racetrack or any other property in the community. There's a noise ordinance that it has to apply to. So we're recommending that same thing, like a bar, restaurant, anything where you have outdoor noise. You might have, a lot of bars and restaurants have outdoor bands or have outdoor music going on.
Okay.
Or, we would apply the same standard as we would.
So people could be listening to, equivalent of a band at a bar, if they're across the street or half a block away or something.
Whatever the noise ordinance is, that's what we're saying. The noise ordinance has to apply, has to be compliant at the property line during the level of the noise ordinance, which is after 10 and then.
Okay. I see that as a potential problem. I can't do anything about it.
Stephen and Jeff.
I just want to say, I like the facade changes. I think that it's
Oh, I do too.
a very, very positive change. And there's sort of a continuity between the Welcome Center, the Convention Center. It's just, it's nice continuity for the city, so thank you.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, I view these as a positive change to what we're doing, and I'm glad we were able to put the developer agreed to put the limits on the signage. The noise ordinance, is that to be in contiguous with the hours of operation of the video sign? Because I think our ordinance may be a little bit different. If we allow them a 1 hour after the event, then they may have to shut off the noise because if it complies to the noise ordinance.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
That's a good point.
We missed that one. The 1 hour after. When we designed the condition for the noise ordinance, for the sound coming out of this, it was to match the noise ordinance. We didn't have that 1 hour afterwards, but, I mean, it's still noise, so I think we'd still
I'm fine with it being
comply with the noise.
comply with the noise ordinance. I just wanted to point it out, so that we don't have a misunderstanding later.
Yeah, I mean, so it would still apply as our noise. It would still be required to follow our noise ordinance. That's the way the condition is.
And I seconded this based off that we were adding item number 14.
Yeah,
Correct.
we'll probably reword item 13, kind of go in conjunction with each other. 13 is kind of allowing specific off-premise advertising.
Right.
So we'll probably have to, we discussed a little bit of exactly trying to figure out how to word that to say you can't do any off-premise advertising.
On
Except-
the video,
Yeah.
I'm only concerned about the video. The other one where, they may be putting, a gate sponsored by that's kind of off-premise advertising if we're allowing that.
So we could actually add a condition, say something like no use of video display for off-premise advertising purposes.
Yeah.
Simple. All right.
I agree with
When it-
that. I second it, that's fine.
All right. Any further discussion? Now let's call a roll.
Weigert. Borsuk.
Aye.
Holmes.
Aye.
Hintz.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Crop. Aye. Kiefer.
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
All right. Moving on to item 5A. Zone change from institutional district to SMU PD suburban mixed-use district with planned development overlay for property located at 1860 Wisconsin Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir.
This item was laid over from the last meeting due to some concerns that were raised about the proposed rezoning, and the next item, the PD amendment to McDonald's. This request is for the rezoning of a 30-foot wide by 250-foot long strip of land on the east side of Our Savior Church property. Up on the screen, I have a map showing the location of the proposed zone change. The current zone change of the strip is I institutional, where the request is to rezone that strip to SMU PD, which is suburban mixed use with a planned development. The plan is for McDonald's to purchase that strip of land and incorporate it into their property, as far as to enable them to do a redesign of their drive-through operation. Plan Commission requested staff to meet with representatives of the church and McDonald's to determine the true extent of the land to be conveyed and potential impacts on a church from resulting from the conveyance of land. McDonald's proposed lot line will cut into the church parking lot as shown up on the screen on the westerly side, which would eliminate a row of 18 parking stalls. And in addition to that, the pavement would have to be cut back to meet the church's 7.5-foot side yard setback requirement to keep the church in conformance with the zoning ordinance. Staff evaluated the proposal and found that the elimination of the stalls does not place the church into nonconformance with the required off-street parking areas or parking spaces. And then after the pavement is removed, there will still be about a 26-foot wide drive lane serving the stalls just to the west. Also, the church did mention that they are in the process of planning a parking lot expansion, which would go to the south of the existing parking lot, in part to reconnect to a second parking lot of the church and to recoup some of the lost parking resulting from the land purchase or proposed land purchase. The landscaping on the church property consists of a number of pretty tall evergreen trees and shrubs. The proposed plan, I think it's up here. We'll get to that in the next item, but the plan identifies 18 trees and 2 shrubs to be removed, and just 6 remaining on the south side, just north of the McDonald's dumpster enclosure. Staff evaluated the impact on the landscaping requirements for the church property, and during our research, the parking lot was constructed in 1961 at the same time the parking lot was constructed in 1961 at the same time the church was, and at that time parking lot landscape was not required. So what that means, the landscape that's being removed does not need to be replaced. The representatives from the church did indicate that they may add some landscaping along with new landscaping that will be required as part of their parking lot expansion project. The strip of land is recommended by the comp plan to be utilized for institutional uses. If the land transfer does go through, staff is comfortable in the fact that that the strip of land being attached to McDonald's still would be considered consistent with the comprehensive plan, since the vast majority of the McDonald's property is being used commercially. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the zone change from I institutional to SMU PD suburban mixed-use plan development as requested.
All right, technical questions, David.
As far as transitional side yard setbacks, use will be considered the most intensive.
The McDonald's.
Okay, so the intensity of any landscaping would fall on them?
Correct, and that will be addressed in the next staff report.
Jeff?
Yeah, since these things are all being done in piece, kind of hard to plan. And my question is, by doing this, and the church now needs to expand their parking lot, they're taking out parking lot, which is reducing their impervious. And then they're gonna add to it and increase their impervious. Is that gonna trigger a burdensome on them in terms of our water, runoff ordinances that we're not taking in consideration at this point in time by doing these approvals? Because right now, they're gonna lose impervious because you're gonna take off, a good portion of the parking lot. So now all of a sudden, the impervious is down, and now they're gonna add to it. And I want to know if we looked at to see whether that would trigger a burden on them because of this particular action, that we won't know until, whenever they come around, whether that's this year or next year, and they come around and say, I want to add to my parking lot.
They are planning on, or they're hoping that the church expansion will be concurrent with McDonald's improvements. Steve?
Yeah, but we don't know if that'll trigger an undue burden on them yet, because we haven't evaluated that.
I know they contacted,
Back, so you have to get me caught up to speed, sorry.
I know the church representatives have been in contact with Public Works, but I don't think anything's been officially submitted yet.
Correct.
So we haven't evaluated that to see if the change in impervious is going to trigger
based on the preliminary discussions, with their removal of a portion, their lot, well, I don't expect,
They remove it, so now all of a sudden it goes down, and then they're gonna add to it.
yeah, the new area, I suspect, isn't going to exceed the 20,000 square foot threshold, to require them to do anything substantial, as far as water quality or quantity in this location. Simply looking at the areas, I just don't think they'll get 20,000 square feet. They'll be well on their way toward that 20,000 square feet, so if they elect to reconstruct additional portions a lot in the future, they will get there a lot faster than otherwise and need to do that.
In your preliminary conversations, was it their intent to resurface the existing parking lot or to tear it out? Because that would then cause a problem.
I don't believe there were intentions on tearing it out. That I believe there were some spot repairs and some resurfacing, but I believe Mr. Rasmussen's here if you have those questions, if you want to get those questions answered.
And just for size comparison, this purple strip here, that is 7,500 square feet. So what I think they're talking about over here is going to be well under 20,000 square feet.
Other technical questions? All right, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Zone change portion. Okay, back to the commission.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call roll.
Iger.
Aye.
Boyce.
Aye.
Holmes.
Aye.
Hintz.
Aye.
Aye.
Crop.
Aye.
Yeah.
Kiefer.
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
Moving on to item 5B, approval of the general development and specific implementation plan, plan development amendment for a drive-through expansion for property located at 1863 Jackson Street.
Okay, thank you. Yep, this is a continuation of McDonald's request. Subject site is approximately, well, it consists of 2 parcels totaling just over 1 acre in size. Currently developed as McDonald's fast food restaurant with drive-through, off-street parking area, dumpster enclosure, and landscape areas. The development was approved with a conditional use permit and planned development in 1998, when a former traditional style restaurant was raised and replaced with the current retro style building. The current use is a drive-through fast food restaurant. Petitioner's not proposing any changes to the use other than doing modification to their drive-through system located on the west side of the building, and I'll get to that in a little while. Part of this request is to combine that previously mentioned 30-foot strip of land and tie it together with the base parent parcel of McDonald's, and along with another strip of land on the south side, and combine all 3 parcels into one. He briefly talked about landscaping. Well, yeah, staff met with the representatives of McDonald's and the church to go over those issues addressed in the zone change staff report. As we found out, the landscaping on the church property will not need to be replaced due to the age of the parking lot facility. Or as a site design. Okay, up on the screen, it's an existing conditions map showing the existing trees I talked about previously. The ones with X's are the ones that are proposed to be removed. And then this grayed out portion on the church property is the portion of the parking lot which is going to be removed, which equates to 18 parking stalls. But again, enough aisle space will be left. There should be around 26 feet left, where the code would require 24 feet. Staff originally was going to place, or I did place a condition that the 3 lots be combined into one. Since the staff report was written, preliminary CSM has been submitted to the city showing all 3 lots combined into one. So once the conditions are up on a screen, that one can be removed because that's been met. Next site plan shows the original and revised site plan. One of the concerns Plan Commission and staff had was The proposed, the original site plan proposed 6 new stalls along the northwest corner of the property. Staff had concerns with that location due to the close proximity of the entrance off of Grunwald Avenue. Potential conflicts of vehicles trying to back out and interfering with vehicles in the queue line or trying to get through the proposed bypass lane. So on the right side, at our meeting, staff addressed or expressed these concerns, and they were agreeable to remove those, and as a benefit, more additional green spaces being provided. Approximately 1,700 square feet of more green space will be on the site as this gets developed. As far as the main purpose of this request, it's to redesign the drive-through system, which is currently a single lane tandem drive-through, where they're proposing to do a 2-lane drive-through system where vehicles enter the queue line and then split into 2 separate ordering lanes and then converge back into 1 lane and then stop at the pay window and the food pickup window. It's very similar to the McDonald's on South Keller Street if you've ever utilized that drive-through. This petitioner is claiming that it's more efficient and should have lower queue times. Per the applicant's narrative, as it sits today, about 88.2% of the site is impervious. And go back to this one. However, with the addition of the 30-foot strip of land from the church property and plus the removal of these parking stalls at the northwest corner, it actually drops the overall impervious down to 79.8%. It still exceeds what's allowed in the SMU district. SMU allows 70% for impervious surface ratio. However, since it is a net decrease in the amount of impervious surface, no additional action would be required by the council to approve that. As far as access and circulation, no proposed changes are being proposed. There's currently 2 driveway entrances off of Jackson Street and 1 off of West Grunwald Avenue. Parking, again, no changes are being proposed, especially after the removal of the 6 proposed stalls, so no additional changes are being requested. Signage and lighting. The submittal did not include a photometric plan, but it will be reviewed at site plan review to make sure it's in compliance. The site plan does indicate a couple of light poles are being removed to allow for the redesign of the drive-through lanes. And again, signage package, very rough signage was submitted, but again, during site plan review, more detailed package will be submitted and have to meet zoning requirements and will be reviewed during site plan review. Landscaping. This is the revised site plan, or the landscape plan. They are showing a lot of overstory trees to be planted along the east lot line. The proposed setback of the bypass lane here is shown to be approximately 5 feet off the newly created property line. Well, during research on this and the original plan development, they were approved for a 5-foot setback along the west line, so it's in keeping with the original approved plan development. One item of concern is with the buffer yard requirement. With the McDonald's being a more intensive use, there is a buffer yard requirement from the church property, which requires a 10-foot setback only if a 6-foot tall privacy fence is constructed. Staff reviewed this, and due to the property abutting another parking lot, non-residential parking lot, staff feels a new or a privacy fence would be unnecessary and more aesthetically pleasing to provide additional lands or additional plantings along west property line. So during site plan review, we'll evaluate that. Their initial counts They're required to provide 608 points of landscaping, and as their plan is, with their submitted plan, they're showing 698 and a half points of plantings, which is well above what's required. Again, that will be verified during review. Stormwater management, the proposed improvements are small enough where it won't trigger any major changes to the parking lot, and per their comments during review, would only need to collect and convey stormwater. So with that, staff is, there's the signage. That's just an image of the CSM that was submitted. And with that, staff is recommending approval of the specific general development and specific implementation plans, along with the plan development amendment with the following conditions: that the three stalls shall be combined into one, which has been met for condition 1. Base standard modification allow down to a 5-foot side yard setback for the proposed parking area and drive-through bypass lane. Oops, I'm sorry, cross out that parking area. Missed that. So it'd only be down to 5 feet for the drive-through bypass lane. The 6 proposed stalls at the northwest corner of the property shall be removed and replaced with green space, which was achieved. And then lastly, a base standard modification to exempt the buffer yard requirement for the 6-foot tall privacy fence along the west property line, and instead be landscaped with more intensive plantings as approved by community development.
All right, thank you. Technical questions, Jeff?
Yeah, my question is on the buffer yard with the fencing. Part of the reason for fencing is to reduce the amount of noise and spillover from, in this purpose, a commercial property, and also any kind of ambient light, that kind of stuff. So when we talk about intensive landscaping, do we have requirements for intensive landscaping on height and density in terms of, so that it'll cut down that ambient noise or that ambient light from
They are,
hitting the next property over?
yeah, they are.
And vice versa. I mean, if the church is doing something at night and they're coming in and with people have lights, it could be hitting the face of the people coming through the drive-through. So I'm wondering, what does intensive mean if we're taking out that fence that would serve that purpose? Why wouldn't you have had a fence with the landscaping in front of it or behind it? Or is the intent mean we just have a bunch of density and taller bushes and trees?
Well, yes, and yes. They are proposing a number of overstory deciduous trees along here, which will help shade from the power, the pole mounted light fixtures. But again, during winter, it's not going to be as effective. As far as ground level, during review, staff can make recommendations to swap out more appropriate, more thicker or more shielding type vegetation like arborvitae or something like that. So that is still a possibility that we can take a look at that.
All right, I would recommend that you take a look at that, just so that we don't, so we don't have any potential conflicts.
The only thing
going on down the
I would add, personal preference, is a nice vegetation beats a fence every time.
That's what our thought was, and then with the location,
Yep.
I mean, the church building is probably close to 200 feet away, so.
David?
Just to build upon what Jeff's discussion was, that privacy fence is, what, 90% opacity, 100% opacity? So I would think that some of the direction that for more intensive landscaping would start reaching those opacity levels to address those concerns. But I have an additional concern of this sort of being a high-traffic, street-type operation, is the sort of the operation and maintenance of the landscaping, in particular the potential negative impacts in winter. And is there any way to address, if this is a valid concern, how we make sure that this maintained and not negatively impacted by weather conditions?
A question for the petitioner. depending on the scheduling for their landscaper, landscaping people. And they could schedule earlier maintenance times, early morning. I mean, I know you have the morning rush, but I guess it would have to be pretty early.
I'm sorry, I meant it a little bit differently, that maintenance as far as that it's maintained.
Making sure it looks nice.
At the,
Oh,
in the
all the time.
install level, and not, goes to ground all of a sudden.
They're required to maintain it in perpetuity. I mean, that's what, when we have an approved landscape plan, we have that landscape plan on the books. If something dies, they're required to replace it. And we go out all the time because people have made changes, they've chopped down trees, they've done this, they've done that, and we've notified them, so you have to bring your landscape plan back. So when you see it, we take care of it.
Other technical questions? John?
Just, and this probably is more when we get to the end, but, did I hear correctly that 1 and 3 have been taken care of? Do we actually need those as recommendations on here?
Well, those can be removed.
Okay.
Just part of two,
So we don't
most of 2 and
discuss them
4.
at all or anything?
Other technical questions? Seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? All right, back to the commission for discussion and a vote. Any discussion of the motion? Spell roll.
Weigert. Forsythe.
Aye.
Holmes. Hens.
Aye.
Crop.
Aye.
Kiefer.
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 7-0.
All right, item number 6, neighborhood meeting comprehensive plan land use amendment, which is not something that requires council action, so we're not voting, we're just talking, right?
Right now, yeah,
All right, so Darren, it's up to you.
So this is a kind of a new process for us. We have our comprehensive plan, we have our adopted comprehensive plan land use map. And when we have to make changes from that from time to time, it has to run through the plan commission process and has to be approved by the plan commission and ultimately the common council. Prior to us moving forward with that process, we do some analysis of the area, we take a look at trends, things like that. But ultimately, we want to talk with some of the landowners that are being affected by these actions that we're moving forward with. We've talked about this before, generically during workshops, things like that. But now the city has actually received a request to consider changing the land use map in this area of the community, and we'll get to that in a minute. And as part of that process, we're not only looking at the area of concern or the subject area that we've received a request in, but we're also going to be looking at a broader area for that. And let's see if I can pull up a decent map here. Jeff was supposed to have, there we go. So we've received a request for a land use amendment in this area of the community. So this is the Southwest Industrial Park. This is the city land use plan. So the colors on the land use plan represent residential, industrial, agricultural, commercial. And what that shows is this is our 2020 land use plan. What we anticipated when we put the plan together in 2025, we anticipated this would be the land use pattern going forward. Ignore the roads. We were just playing around and put some roads in there, these roads. So what we received a request to consider changing this particular parcel from industrial to residential in this area. Now the area, so when we got the request in, we said, okay, let's look at the broader area, because anything we do in this area has broader implications from a land use perspective elsewhere. It has broader implications to the north, where we have an active industrial park. A little bit to the south, but you got 44 through there, so you're on the other side of 44. But as part of this process, there's a request right here to change. We thought we'd look at a broader. We'd look at that broader area. As part of that process going forward, we'd like to. The purpose of the neighborhood meeting is to solicit comments from people who are potentially impacted for this request and moving forward. So the neighborhood meeting is giving, we're soliciting some comments, any concerns as we move forward with this. So when we started to look at the request for the request to change this, so we started playing a little bit with the land use pattern, And what we saw is potentially changing this area to residential as you transition over to the west, maybe into a commercial, a mixed-use district, and then over towards Clairville Road as maintaining that particular area as industrial. That's, again, just our initial thoughts going into it before we've solicited any comments from the public. Now, we set, as part of this process for the neighborhood meeting, we sent out notices to people to resident or property owners in the subject area and around the subject area. So, because we wanted to get some comments. We've heard two comments already. One was a concern over here by the owners of United Cooperative, which owned this parcel over here. Their concern was bringing residential into this area. They have a lot of railroad use of the tracks, so there's a lot of cars banging, things like that. So they're concerned that if we make a change, I don't know if they're concerned if we make a change over here, but they were certainly concerned if we make a change in their immediate vicinity, what that's going to do on their operations and creating nuisances. So that was one comment that we received. The other comment we received was on the south side of 44, whether changing the land use up here would necessarily change the land use down on the south side, and it potentially could. I'm not sure. We included this originally in the plan based on a study from, I think, 2003. That's why kind of this pattern is laid out, the industrial pattern is laid out the way it is. It was based on a study. It was also based on a study of absorption rates that we were seeing in the market at the time. So when we move forward with this, we're anticipating that we're going to move forward, I think in the first meeting in September with an actual recommendation for a land use change in this area. They'll be in part based on some of the discussion that we hear tonight and some of the comments that we hear tonight. So the purpose really of the meeting is to solicit some comments from the public and people who are potentially affected by this potential request, and then we'll formulate a recommendation for likely the next Plan Commission meeting in September, the first one.
Darren, you showed where the cooperative is.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the new one that we just approved, for that Oshkosh truck's gonna use?
Transload facility.
Yeah,
Transload
the
facility
transload facility.
is up in here. Transload facility is up in here. So here's the main entrance off of 91 into the industrial park. The transload facility's in this area.
We talked about it one time, their initial thoughts, they'd start off of here and then potential expand.
Yeah, that expansion, I believe, would go to the north and, yeah, into the east.
So there's no need for technical questions here. We can just open up to the public and try to get, pardon me.
Just a
I'd
little
rather
bit.
address a couple times.
Okay, absolutely.
I think
Okay,
public
fine.
will be
That's fine. I'm just Kathy.
In the packet you sent out, it suggested that the potential zone change was only from 44 north. And yet this strip of land along the south side of 44 is shown in that plan as industrial.
It's shown in our plan right now as industrial. This is the current land use plan.
So but the proposal.
I'm not looking at that area south of 44 yet.
And I mean, maybe it'll change first meeting in September, but the proposal was sort of a triangle,
It's gonna be this area.
so draw that area.
So it's
So
the area.
not changing the south side.
No, I'm not looking at the south side because that has further implications down to Fisk Avenue. So I think you'd have to look at this broader area.
Okay, the second point is, will you talk about the amount of industrial land? that
Yes.
we have? I mean,
Correct.
do that now
Yep.
before the public hears about it.
I didn't bring all those charts with me from our last discussion, but the changes and the analysis that will be, the rationale for any changes we make in here will be based on that analysis we've done of industrial in our existing industrial parks and in our planned area. Right now, based on our absorption rates, we have a upwards of 100-year supply of excess industrial land in the area. If we have too much, if we have such an excess, that's why we thought it'd be a good idea to take a look at alternative land uses in these particular areas where we think are potentially over.
So if Plan Commission were to, and the council were to approve this change, then you'll come in at that time, at the next meeting with, okay, if we
More
take this
information.
off, then we'll have a 75-year supply of,
Yeah, I mean, we
or
did,
whatever the number is.
yeah, we remember, during that workshop, we did that analysis of how much we had on the books, how much we had actually that was developable, and how much that we had actually planned. And I think you looked at, let's see, Jeff put that up here. Just in HI, we have, we're sitting in, with vacant, in our parks, about 601 acres of vacant industrial lands right now. Now, that doesn't go to what our planned area is. So if you look at what's planned, I think we also have that statistic. We know how much land area is actually planned for the various uses. So that'll be part of the analysis moving forward.
Dave and then Jeff.
Two things. One, I appreciate the absorption discussion, but the other is intensity. And I think that when we're looking at, put that in that metric, because between the transload facility and what the plans are for that transload facility, and as well as the co-op, certainly may have a different impact on what our vision is.
Dave is absolutely correct. I mean, this area this is Southwest Industrial Park. It's zoned heavy industrial. You potentially have all those heavy industrial uses that are in there. The transload facility is going to make some noise. United Cooperative makes some noise. But also that's, why we're going through this process. We also want to hear from people in that area that are living with us.
The second thing is that we know we know that what has happened in the past or what hasn't happened in the past, and part of it was general economic conditions. It would be interesting to know in your evaluation is what is the level of interest, what are the level of prospects in absorbing some of that land, and putting that in the decision tree.
I think that, and the other thing you didn't add to it is how developable are these lands based on all the wetlands in there too. And there's a lot of lesser desirable lands in this particular area as well, and we do have that information as well.
But
I mean, it was just another thing to add into it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have to make decisions based on all those. Now, is it going to be an exact science? Are we going to have all the answers? No, but I hope we have most of the answers that, we're able to make an informed decision on.
Jeff.
And how does the public get to understand that? Because Dave makes a good point. I mean, if the transload expands, then most of that truck traffic is probably going to go down 91, right, to get to there. And we know that's probably in their intent is to expand because of the need for that kind of facility within the greater Fox Valley area, not just Oshkosh truck, but it's a huge area that could potentially have that if they resolve the double stack rail issue. The other one, and Kathy talked about on the industrial side, but I know we're working with East-West, right?
Central.
East Central, to relook at our comprehensive plan, and we talked about absorption rates and the growth rates for residential.
Mm-hmm.
If I recall, we didn't have, with their projection of population,
Mm-hmm.
we are a little taxed on residential property.
Growth rates are kind of bland. I mean, that's
Yeah. So, I mean, my point is that we aren't just looking at industrial, we have to take in consideration the growth pattern for residential and balancing kind of that to make sure that we have enough residential property for the types of residential, whether it's single family, multifamily, whatever, in and around the city itself, not concentrated in one area, but in and around, and on the outskirts, things of that nature that's desirable. So, yeah, I understand there's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I'm concerned about the intensity and the use in that area. If we decide to put residential, then 10, 15 years from now, we have now a bunch of conflicts, or we have to limit
Avoidable
both of-
conflicts.
Yeah, we
If
have
we-
to limit their growth because we say, geez, we can't have 1,000 trucks going down there a week.
Correct, that's why we're having that conversation. Just back to where the residential, we have maps like this that show the residential land inventory all around the community, and you can see in this particular, at least in this particular region in the city, you don't have a lot from a residential basis. Now that was planned that way, there's no doubt. We came forward with a plan that showed manufacturing, industrial in this area. That plan was, again, developed in the early 2000s. During a different time, and that's why, again, you have to look at your land use plan periodically. We've received that request, and now we're looking at that,
Okay.
land use plan.
All right, other technical comments or questions? All right, with that, folks, anything, party from the public, if you have anything to say, questions, comments, thoughts, we really need to hear them. Please step up to the microphone and state your name and address, please. Very interesting issue.
Yeah, anybody who has any comments on it, this is the chance to comment on any proposed changes. The city's going to move forward with a recommendation, whether it's going to support, whether it's going to modify, whether it's, what it's going to do in this particular area. This is your opportunity to kind of let us know what your concerns and what your thoughts are of us potentially changing that land use plan. So anybody who wants to comment can come on up to the podium. Let us know your support, your concern, anything that you want to hear. It'd be nice to hear from the petitioner. Come in. There you go.
Hi, I'm Jackie Miller with SC Swiderski. It's 401 Ranger Street in Mosinee. We are the petitioner that brought forth kind of this issue. We are looking at a 15.5-acre parcel and would like to put multifamily on it. So our plans call for 140 units of multifamily, and we did select this site. We've been working with the landowner for about 2 years to acquire this property. We've been checking vacancy rates for apartments in Oshkosh. The 5-year average is below 5%, and the current average vacancy rate is 3.8%. So we do feel like this area does have a lot of demand and growing demand for multifamily. We like to be in kind of the outskirts. It's been a very successful strategy for us in other communities. We're currently in 20 communities throughout Wisconsin and have built these same type of units. We finished in 3 areas this year. So the units we're proposing, we finished this spring in Wisconsin Rapids, Anago, and Eagle River. So we know it's a very popular plan, and the public's responding very well. They are smaller units, but a little more upscale. So we do like to be in areas where we are near work facilities for people. That's one of the trends for housing. People want to live as close as possible to where they work for convenience. So we do like that there is some industrial in this area. We feel multifamily is a good buffer to maybe some other developments, and in other areas we've built, it has spurred further development. So I know there hasn't been as much activity in this area as you probably would like, but maybe making some of these changes, in particular this 15-acre parcel we're interested in, might spur some further development.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Can you comment on Dave's question about how you view the impact on your development if there is a higher industrial, heavy use? Because we approve the transport area. There is a huge need in the Fox Valley for this kind of facility to do piggybacks and stuff to lower transportation costs. And I see their business expanding over a period of time to a more intense use, which would come down primarily Highway 91 to get to them.
Some of our other developments, we are in areas where there is a little more traffic and noise. We're very familiar with the railroad track there. We're close to railroad tracks in some of our other communities. We like to be by businesses that are expanding because we feel, again, that traffic coming in and out, there is more potential for jobs in the area. And our tenants in our other locations, we've been able to do enough buffering, and they're still attracted to our complexes. So it's issues we've dealt with in other areas and been successful with.
Other questions for the petitioner?
Have you, excuse me.
Oh, go ahead.
Have you looked at developing in the center city?
Our strategy right now is to be kind of on the outskirts. So if you look through our website, you can see all of our other developments. They tend to be at kind of on these outskirts. We are long-term investors, so we do design our buildings, build them, but we're holding on to them for long-term real estate investments. So being in these areas with the potential growth has really been a good strategy for us.
Other questions for her? And the name of your company again, website?
SC Swiderski.
Thank you very much. Anyone else here to speak to this item today or to share their public comment or question? Come on up, sir.
Just a couple of comments. My name is Gary Eke. I'm with G. Earl Real Estate, and I represent the landowner that they're pondering their development on. Just to the east of the subject property are some currently residential parcels, which then butt up to the remnant parcels in the Universal Business Park. And those parcels, I would think, would be commercial in development, whether it's part of this project or in the future or whatever, they'll tie into the business park, at some point. So you'll be buffered on the east side with commercial property. And then the property on the west contiguous is pretty, a lot of that is wetlands, as Darren had referred to, or whatever, would be lowland and hardly, probably not very developable. I would guess that will come into a detention area at some point in future development. That would happen on the west side then. So that would also be somewhat of a buffer. I'm anticipating, nobody knows for sure, but I'm anticipating that that would be difficult to develop, and it would be a further buffer from any industrial that's then developed on farther to the west. And so as you're pondering these, or as the neighbors are pondering that, they'd probably be aware of that as well. That's, the vision. We don't know exactly how it's going to shake out, but I think that's what we're looking at. And correct me if I'm wrong, Darren. So.
No, Gary raises a good point. And the reason why we have to look at the larger implications of just this one is that he's correct. So we've got this request to residential over here. Then you have those 3 kind of isolated or 4 residential uses between this and what would be part of our business park property. I think the daycare center is over there. So that's a good point. We have to look at that area, and that's why, again, we're looking at this broader area inside of here.
Hey, anybody else? Comments, thoughts, questions? Okay, and public comment is closed, but people can still email, call,
Sure.
whatever.
Email, call.
David and then Jeff?
Can I just make an additional request as you do the evaluation? I believe that when we approved the development on Oregon Street Road and Ripple, that was already zoned.
It was already.
It was properly zoned.
Properly land use plan.
Sorry?
Land use plan. It wasn't zoned yet. The
But
land use plan was residential.
And
Correct.
we know that we are having conflicts between industry and residential there. And we also know that, at least by the paper, that there's a potential for industrial expansion there. And so we already have an example. We can't do anything about that, but we should in our evaluation process. And, to further Jeff's point, we're not going to be looking at heavy industrial use at 7 in the morning till 5 at night. Probably looking at least 2 shift operations. The other is when we look at how this fits with our comprehensive plan, I thought that part of our vision was, in some respects, to shrink the city, to make sure that we have a livable community within the community, and to redevelop the core of the community, and does encouraging large-scale developments on the periphery advance that. Plus the cost of service. The further you go out, the cost of city services to service those facilities.
Jeff?
And Dave, I hear what you're saying, but I mean, there's always a counterpoint to that too, in that, yes, we'd also encourage having housing out by our industrial parks, so people could encourage to walk or bike to work and things of that nature. In addition, we talked about the one out on Oregon, that not all apartment complexes, people want to live downtown in the city. They may want to live out in the country a little bit more, and they should be able to. Just because it's multi-housing doesn't mean they should always have to be forced to live in the city proper. The other thing is, Darren, when you come back on September, will you have those wetlands delineated on a map so we kind of know where those may be in terms of buffering?
No, we'll have, I mean, we have this map, which is gonna be, we'll include it. This shows the hydric soils. Oh, Jeff's got it up, never mind. Shoot. So that shows the hydric soil, so we'll have that. So it's not a delineation, we haven't delineated this area, we don't do that. But it shows, you know, you start to see the brown, right, Jeff? The oranges are kind of the hydric soils. Those would be areas of concern, potential wetlands. The green is developable, generally developable. Again, without a wetland delineation, we don't know. I think we've closed right now, Gary.
Just wanted to say they've completed wetland delineation.
Yeah, well,
This is such an interesting issue to me because I'm intrigued by this company that this is their market. And if they're not making money, I mean, if it's not successful, they're not making money, and clearly they're having some success. It's just an interesting, I guess my own question would be, it sounds like some of the cities they've worked with are a little bit smaller than us and maybe haven't had the intensity of potential industrial use that we're looking at, but I think this is really worth wrestling with. And I would agree with Jeff's points that not everybody wants to live downtown, and this is actually closer to a lot of employment opportunities for many people. But I'm intrigued with this idea.
great. Well, we'll be bringing something back.
Second.
Wait a minute.
But David had one more thing, if we could.
Do we have, when do we have?
Yeah, we have a workshop.
That's a
We have
work.
work-
That's what
adjourned.
Okay, I would just.
David had one comment before.
Yeah, I would request that we put on the agenda, get an overview of what is planned for Oregon Street development, so that we can, to see how it is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and that we have, that the plan commission have vision on it sooner than later, after the engineering drawings are done or the conceptual drawings are done.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. We adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're adjourned. We're moving to workshop, and you noted.